Well, hello and welcome along to the Rangers Rabble podcast. I'm Martin Douglas. Joining me tonight we have Graham. Graham, mate, how you doing? I forgot what you look like. It's been that long.
It's been a while, mate. I am all good. Yeah, good to be back on.
Good. And John, you're back again. I'm going to need to start paying you shortly.
No, I'm alright. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Glad to be here and just talk about all the stuff that we've got exciting going on as football. We're almost back to normality, right? We're almost back to club football. My flirtation with international football is gone now. The Euros is just a ticking time bomb. Let's get back to it.
In saying that, last night was probably the best night of the Euros. I missed
it.
It was good. That was really, really good entertainment last night the whole way through. But yeah, I kind of see now that Scotland are out, I'm kind of drained by the whole, like, everything throughout that France-Portugal game in reference to Germany-Hungary was just about the permutations as to who England were playing the following Tuesday.
And now they're playing Germany, and all we're hearing is, they'll beat them quite comfortably. You never, ever, ever write off Germany. But we're not here to talk about the Euros. We are live, of course, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And as I say every podcast, please do like, subscribe, share, all the other stuff that you can possibly do. And check out our website, rangersrabble.co.uk. Tonight, for the first time, and if anybody fancies this, I hope they do, and I hope it goes well. If you fancy coming on to make a point, ask the guys a question, which they probably won't know the answer to. Head over to Rangers Rabble, at Rangers Rabble on Twitter. Send me a wee DM, and because I'm just that good, I can multitask, and I will sort you out, and I will get you on. We've got a few things lined up tonight, guys, but there's a couple of things that have kind of broke. The first thing I want to touch on, John, is that UEFA have announced that they're doing away with the away goals rule. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, of all the things, every single year, do you know we were told, right, honorary licence by Stephen McLean, right, referee in Scotland, that the only way these rules get brought into practice is managers vote on them. So the managers within the European elite leagues put forward ideas as to what they would like to see implemented as new rules, and they bring them forward, whether it be rules of the game, whether it be changes to fixtures, and they said that's how this functions. Yet every time a rule changes, managers goes, whose idea was this? They're tampering with things that I don't ever think needed to be tampered with. See, if you're going to do this, you need to bring back golden goal. You need to bring back something, otherwise, surely the excitement of playing a home game or going on away trips totally lost now. If we go away to a big team in the qualifiers and get a 1-1 draw, like a Galatasaray qualifying for Champions League, it doesn't really mean anything. It's not the same. It's just like we need to go through games.
No, I know, but I've got to admit, Graham, I was never a fan of the away goals rule. I always felt that 9 times out of 10 it benefited the bigger team, the better team.
I agree a wee bit with what you're saying there, mate. I always hated it when you go out in away goals, but I suppose that when you get through in away goals, then you like it. But I've never really thought too much about it. Whether I prefer it.
I probably should have told you I was going to mention it before we started. Maybe that would have been good.
That would have helped that. But as John says there, you go to a bigger team, but if you get that away goal, you're excited to bring them back to Ibrox, a full pack, and then see what you can get from that. But I don't know too much about it, to be honest.
So I never quite got your answer there, John. Are you for or against the away goals rule? Because it was kind of just a wee rabble there, which is what the podcast is called, but fair enough.
I'm completely indifferent. I don't understand. I don't think all of a sudden, overnight, Rangers are going to wait at Galatasaray and trying to score 3, 4, 5 goals because the away goal rule doesn't matter. And I don't think Galatasaray are going to come to us and do the same thing. I think I think what they're hoping to do, obviously, is create attacking football in both legs, because the away goals are relevant, but it won't happen. People will still fancy going and nicking a draw at an away ground and beating them back at home without the risk now of conceding the first goal and going out. So I don't know. I like the edge. I like the edginess of having an away goal rule. I kind of added the excitement a little bit. Like, if I think to Rangers Braga, when the home leg, would we have pushed back when it went to 2 each? Like the way we were, would we have went full throttle, knowing that those 2 away goals weren't there? It was just a case of get back level and we're fine. I don't know. I might be wrong. I might be totally ill-advised. It might be brilliant. It might be amazing. It might make games even better. But I don't think people are going to change their mentality going away from home.
Well, that's what kind of CGMs just say. They say teams will let to park the bus more as going for an away goal won't matter. And 11 away was better than a 0-0, Graham. I don't know. You sometimes think this rule will help, and that rule will help if it gets taken away. But I suppose CGM has got a point. It might kind of make games a bit more boring.
It could do. I think he meant 1-1, right? He never meant 11. But I think that's what they're aiming for. But I just think there's so many other things we could have fixed before we were tampering about with the away goal rule. I just think it's something that didn't need to be looked at. I don't know who was sitting asking for this. Which again leads me to who the hell is making up these rules anyway? Who's doing all these changes throughout? But we are. Hopefully, Rangers will get a preferable draw and win both games anyway, and it won't matter.
I know we won't care about something like this until it affects us, and then we'll all go.
How do we then do the head-to-head though within the Champions League groups when you get to there? Because there's no, you can't go back and play extra time of 2 games that have already played if we drew 1-1 away at some ground and they drew 0-0 at us. Like, how do you...
I don't think it would change the head-to-head. It would still be we've got the 1 goal, they've got no goals. I don't know. Anyway, you're confusing me. Let's move on, because you can only talk about the away goal rule for so long before everybody becomes bored. What people won't be bored with, Graham, is the possibility, and I don't know how big a possibility it is. But for us Rangers fans, there's the slightest possibility that we could maybe see the return of Billy Gilmour.
I'm trying so much not to get too excited about this, mate, to be honest. I mind seeing him playing in the Victory Shield for Scotland against like England, Northern Ireland and Wales. I don't know if they still do that tournament. It used to be on Sky Sports. And back then, that was the first time I'd seen him, and I'd heard a wee bits about him. So, and then I was gutted when he left. We were in a mess at that time, so we had no chance to keep him. And if the thought of him coming back, playing alongside Stephen Davis in that midfield would be unreal. So I'm just trying to get overhyped about it. So fingers crossed, though.
Well, Fog Dog says no brainer. Graham, there's some slight feedback coming for your computer. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you've got maybe earphones you could plug in, but there is some slight feedback coming. Sorry, John. Fog Dog says no brainer if possible. Obviously, it's a no brainer if possible. But is it possible?
I honestly don't know, right? I find this really interesting. If Chelsea have a future for him, it really depends what they want out of his development. Because going to Rangers you would assume replicate what he's going to have to experience at Chelsea going forward. Teams that are sitting in, you have to break down teams. You're going to have most possession of the ball. Or as you're looking at Billy Gilmour and saying the bit of the game that Billy Gilmour needs to learn is a bit of dig, a bit of how to fight, and would then a Norwich or a Brentford suit that a bit better in the Premier League, and he might learn more skills. I remember talking to Lewis Farini on my Scots Abroad, who's at Man City, and one of the things he said that was amazing about the Man City Academy, but also terrible about it, was from the minute Guardiola came in, they all played 4-3-3. They all played the same style of football. And by the time you got to 1920, you'd never learned another style of football. So if you then don't make it at Man City, where the hell do you go? Because if you drop to League One in England, you've never played that type of football. And it's a real struggle, which is also why Man City end up loaning players out to NAC Breda in Holland. Because again, it's a similar style of football. And maybe that is what Chelsea want Billy Gilmour to go do, is learn something different. I think it really depends on what Chelsea want out of development. I would hope that Billy Gilmour would rather come to a team chasing trophies than a Norwich trying to survive, as it will be in most games.
Aye, can I just say, can we just quickly change? I want to come back to Billy Gilmour, Graham, but John mentioned Man City. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen in the last kind of 30 minutes to an hour, the kind of breaking the news on Twitter. It was a Man City, I think it was the Man City Extra official account, Graham, that Man City are interested in purchasing Umar Sadiq. Please explain to me how or why Manchester City are interested in purchasing Umar Sadiq.
Is that the same one that played the Rangers?
The very one. The very one. Graham's speechless.
I warned you about this, didn't I?
I cannot see him fitting into a Guardiola side.
Right.
What's happened, John, with him? But because he was mince. Listen, just because you don't make it at a team doesn't mean that you're a bad player. But he genuinely looked mince.
He looked awful. This is why I always try and always like reserve some sort of judgment in what I say and leave it open to be wrong. But yeah, there wasn't even a player. There wasn't even a player in there. Just everyone remembers that dive against Aberdeen, but that wasn't even the lowest point. The lowest point was him trying to stay onside at any point in any game. He was honestly beyond useless. But I don't know if that the Rangers cancellation of the loan and going back to Roma, who didn't want him to maybe give him the kick up the arse he needed, because he was insane for Partizan the previous year, and he was the top scorer in La Liga 2 and Almeria's promotion. So something must have clicked. The penny must have dropped somewhere for him, because that's 2 leagues he's went to and been good in. And he'd be good in the. I mean, he's going to be the backup to the backup, right? If he goes to Man City, they must be able to get him on a decent amount of money.
I don't know. It's one of those ones, isn't it? I mean, Curry Muncher, he was fast as hell with the touch of a fairy elephant. There you go. That's a good way to put it. RFC 55. I mean, he always knew he was a player, so fair play to RFC 55. And Graham, this is the bit that gets me. Fog Dog, Man City want him for €30 million.
I just don't understand that one at all. I hope it was only a loan we had him on it, so
there's no signing on fee. There's no.
We should sign him off just to sell him on. That's baffling me. You surprised me with that one. I can't see him fitting in even to what Man City reserves. I watch a lot of the youth football in England because of MUTV, and Man City's youth team is amazing. I don't see him even fitting into that, never mind the first team, to be honest.
Well, Willie Irwin said that even when he's seen him, and it's been put in the chat, when he's seen him at development, he was terrible, in the development phase. Right, Peaceful Warrior, he must have some agent. Probably that Raiola's his agent. Right, back to Billy Gilmour, John. Is there a possibility though that Chelsea will want him to go to a Premier League team just to see like the way Rangers do it now, where they bleed the players through League 2, League 1, Championship, SPL? Do you think Chelsea will want to do that with Billy rather than send him to Scotland?
I don't know. I think because we are the team that are in from him, we have invested in Billy Gilmour and being a Scotland player as well and being an ex-Rangers player. I don't really know what Chelsea's plan is. Chelsea always farm out with 40, 50 players out on loan every season. And are they even keeping tabs on him? Is it maybe a case of if he's in Norwich, he's closer to home and they can keep a tab on him? I don't know. I only just seen this morning that this seemed like a genuine link, because this always seemed like a story that was just driven through lazy journalism. Ex-Rangers youth player needs a club, playing well for Scotland. Rangers could probably do with another midfielder. With Davis aging, Jack, we don't know. Hopefully Jack's recovered from all his injury problems now going forward. But there is maybe a gap in that midfield if Glenn Kamara goes, and it would be sensible. But I would also only be interested in Billy Gilmour if we had some sort of buy-in option on him, because I wouldn't want to develop him for a year then lose him. I'd rather have him for a year, buy option, and then we sell him for big money, and we get the money we should have got if we were able to keep the boy in the first place.
Oh, that is never going to happen in a million years. I don't know what you were smoking before we started. Like, see my puppy is going absolutely crazy in the background. He obviously wants Billy Gilmour back at Ibrox. In a word, Graham, yes or no, will we see Billy Gilmour at Ibrox next season?
No.
John?
No.
Apparently he's going to Norwich anyway, so I don't even know why I brought that up. Something I did see, Graham, was I think it was a Colombian Twitter or whatever, saying that Morelos has got absolutely no plans to leave Rangers. So it looks like, I mean, you can never say never, but it looks like we're going to keep him, which can only be positive news.
I've never really been worried about Morelos, to be honest, leaving this summer. I was always like Kamara and Barisic for me. That was the two. But with the stuff we know that he bought a new house, he's just a new baby, so all that kind of settling in, he's happy, and you can see like the celebrations and that. He's constantly smiling, dancing about, and you can see the connection with like Aribo and all that. I can see him definitely staying, and especially for the Champions League. And then it's good, sensible for Rangers as well. If he's a good Champions League, then it adds 10 million straight on his sell-on when he'll be selling next summer possibly. So that's great news, mate. Happy for him.
I know, sorry about that. I had to deal with a puppy. There was absolutely no way I was getting through the rest of this podcast with a puppy going mad. John, just how, I mean, we've seen the way that Morelos' game kind of started to change. It wasn't just all about getting goals, it was about his overall play. So just how important do you think it is that we keep him? Or do you think it may actually be more important for Rangers to try and get a fee for him?
It depends on that. We keep talking about this with the Kamara, the Barisic, all the permutations of what this next season is like if we win the league and get guaranteed Champions League football. Because if we can get it this year, that you can play a good season, you're maybe guaranteed 2 years of that money, which is more than you're going to make off of selling Morelos and Kent.
Mm-hmm.
So it is that, but I always love the wording. See when these statements come out from agents or news sources, it's I don't plan on leaving Rangers. So yeah, I don't plan on calling Steve Clark a genius, but if it gets Scotland to a World Cup, that might happen. So Morelos doesn't plan to leave Rangers, but let's see if a 25 million bid came in the last day of the deadline, Rangers not in the Champions League, and West Ham are sniffing around, something like that. That plan maybe changes a little bit. I don't see him moving abroad. I think it's straight to England. I think that's why the motivation around, well, I mean, we're all guessing here, but it seems that the English has been learned over the last 12 months. And I would guess that would have been a big factor, is that he probably fancies staying in the UK, and that if he's going to England, he needs to learn to speak English very quickly, because that's what clubs will demand of him. But I would hope he'd want to play Champions League football for a year, and then maybe, because you get the opportunity. Europa League seemed to be where he was finding his best form. It seemed to always ignite something different in him. So he's probably thinking the Champions League can be an even bigger step, and he can maybe bypass. West Ham were amazing last year, so maybe that's a bit disrespectful, but he could bypass joining a mid-table side for 25 million and might have a Europa League English side chasing him about if he does well in the Champions League.
Aye, well, we shall wait and see. Sorry, my attention tonight is completely puppy orientated. Let's move on to what we're actually here to talk about, which was we done a reaction to the Scotland game. Scotland obviously getting put out of the Euros, and as expected, obviously there was a mixed reaction for Rangers supporters. Some supporters were gutted, some didn't care. Graham, can you kind of just sum up your feelings towards the Scottish national team? Then John, I'll come to you, and then I want to get the comments in, and I want to get a kind of overall chat about why there is this divide between Rangers fans and Scotland.
My feelings has always been the same. I always want them to win. I like to see them, like, young players coming through. It was ever since I read a book called Das Reboot, and that's what annoys me about Scotland. It's just, for grassroots to government, there's no interest to try and revamp the whole product of Scottish football, and that's what annoys me, like the lack of ambition. But this next generation that's coming through, I'm quite excited about, and looking forward to watching them. Hopefully, get to like more tournaments and stuff. But it's just seems a lack of ambition. That's what kills me. I always want them to win, but I would never ever go to a game at Hampden or that, to be honest. So that's my kind of feelings in Scotland.
Lack of ambition, Graham, but is there also possibly, the stuff that's happened between like the Tartan Army singing about Rangers players? Is any of that came into your thinking when it comes to Scotland?
That's why I wouldn't go to a game, because we witnessed singing, booing Barisic, booing Ryan Jack, booing other players, stuff like the Barry Ferguson, Alan McGregor situation. It goes way back, and then since 2012 it's just got worse. So I would never ever go to a game, to be honest, or go to the fan zones or anything like that. So that's what's killed my going to actually see them live and stuff. That's killed it.
Well, John, obviously, I think we all know your feelings towards Scotland, but just sum it up for us, and then we'll get into the kind of nitty gritty of what's really going on.
I just love football, so the international team is just an extension of that. I think what's happened to Rangers a little bit briefly is we dropped divisions. We never had the quality there that we're going to be in the first team, and that does detract people. There's no denying that. If you remove everything that went on, people's disassociation with combining the SFA with the Scotland national team and no realising that the Scotland national team are just 23 bodies that are put together, they're nothing to do with the overall organisation that's involved in paperwork, votes, team situations, where the team was positioned. So not having a player and not having a dog in the fight, it becomes really easy to not watch Scotland, because you're like, well, there's nobody there. But I'm now looking at it going, Gordon and Marshall are too old. John McLaughlin is the replacement for Alan McGregor in a year and a half. So he's probably going to be the Scotland goalie for 4 seasons. Nathan Patterson coming through. Billy Gilmour's an ex-Rangers player. John Fleck's an ex-Rangers player. As Rangers get their youth system slowly embedded into the first team, you're going to see more players appear. And it's going to become a little harder for people to say they don't care about Scotland or no interest in Scotland. Because players like Ryan Jack have been on the Scotland headquarters thing during the week saying that to represent Scotland would have been the pinnacle of his career at a major tournament. It's hard not to feel that. See if you're going to sit and say that. It means you're actually like dismissing one of your best players. I understand maybe specifically on Scotland, but I always find it interesting how proud Rangers fans are of when Morelos gets picked for Colombia, when Steve Davis is breaking records for Northern Ireland. So I think maybe you just need to remove the whole hatred of the SFA, which I 100% am involved in. And remember that these are 23 boys in a pitch. I think for some people, Steve Clarke was probably an appointment that really just fucking rubbed salt into the wounds for some people because they just didn't like him. And I'm very indifferent. I think we should have got out of that Euros group. I think
we should have.
The problem is with Steve Clarke, there was nobody else for that job. There was literally nobody else I looked at and went, right, okay. It was awful. The application looked awful. You'd have had to go. I honestly don't know how you'd applied. So I think for some people that was just the icing in the cake for folk who had been turned off by Scotland for so many years. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake, Steve Clarke. This is even worse. And I think there is a relationship being bridged for people if they want to watch Scotland. But I cannot see how, if in 4 seasons' time we have 4 or 5 people in that starting 11, how Rangers fans are going to ignore that. They don't need to support it, but I don't think you can also be so dismissive of Scotland if your club players are playing for them, which they will be when we get people settled.
I know. Do you know what? I know it's quite a touchy subject for a lot of people. But Graham, when it comes to Steve Clarke, I don't like him. I don't think there's a lot of Rangers fans that do like him. But when you've already been appointed Scotland manager, and I think it was it the last home game was against Rangers. You beat Rangers. Be happy. I've got nothing against a Kilmarnock manager or Kilmarnock fans being happy, right? But when you've just been appointed Scotland manager, the last thing you should be doing, just in my opinion, maybe some people disagree, is turn around and shout, bye-bye Rangers.
That doesn't bother me as much for being Scotland manager. I can kind of get over that. It's just his negative tactics. That kills me. That's why I don't like him. See the bye-bye Rangers stuff, that really doesn't do anything for me at all, because at the end of the day, if he was there next year, we were going to say bye-bye, come on, stuff like that. So that doesn't bother me at all. But it's just, I don't see how he's a coach for me, or like best a Kilmarnock manager. He shouldn't be anywhere near Scotland, in my opinion. But as John says, who takes it?
Well, maybe now, John, Callum Davidson might be in the running for the Scotland manager's job if it becomes available.
I think that the Steve Clarke thing is nailed in the head, because I think people seem to forget that they were playing Rangers that day, but he did also have a dig at Celtic, who weren't there at all.
I didn't know that.
He said bye-bye Rangers, and when they come next year, bye-bye Celtic as well. People seem to forget that was the full sentence that he said.
Oh, so that's fair enough. That
was just him putting a point about Celtic, about Kilmarnock fans back in their team. But as soon as he left and Kilmarnock got shit, they all went back to one stand and giving us as many stands, as many seats as we wanted. But for what Graham's saying, it's the tactics. You don't need the problem we have in the world of Twitter is Rangers fan badmouth Steve Clarke. Somebody sees it's a Rangers fan and goes, "Oh, typical Rangers fan badmouthing Steve Clarke." You can't win because you're backed into a corner. You do not need to call Steve Clarke a JK, a drunk, a dinosaur. You just need to say that for something like 68% of David Marshall's distribution went over the halfway line, which means 7 out of 10 times he had the ball at his feet, he went long to Lyndon Dykes, whilst we were playing a back three to specifically facilitate playing out for the back. Our strongest area of the team is the central midfielders, and we kept bypassing them for second balls. What is the point? What is the point in all of this if you're bypassing your strength? And that's what bugged me. And it's what bugged me, if you've probably seen it on my Scots Abroad, with Stephen O'Donnell. I had so many people chirping at the bit after the England game, because I said after Czech Republic, he's so wildly out of his depth, and he's Steve Clarke's blind spot. He just can't see it. And he got asked about Billy Gilmour in the press conference for England, and he started praising Stephen O'Donnell. you were asked about Billy Gilmour, and you went straight to your wee side piece that you have to be obsessed with. And then after the Croatia game, Stephen O'Donnell just backed up everything I knew about him. He's so restricted, and so is Steve Clarke. They are a 1 in 3 top performance manager and player. And if you're at Motherwell Kilmarnock and you raise your game against Rangers Celtic, it looks better than folk watching you draw 1-1 with Hamilton, because you're no good enough to break teams down when you're expected to. Steve Clarke's won 4 competitive games or something for Scotland. Steve Clarke got to a Euros through the back door after they extended it to 24 teams, not winning a game and winning 2 penalty shootouts. He drew 2-2 with Austria in one of the first qualifiers, and then couldn't beat Israel for the 3rd time. It's the wrong time for me to be this negative about Scotland, because we're just off the back of making a major tournament. But the idea that he has massively improved us is a total myth. All he's done is make us less shite. And that wasn't hard from where we were. We struggled to beat San Marino in McLeish's last game. That's not hard to beat.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Graham Allen has put in, between booing Rangers players playing for Scotland, singing about hating Rangers and our fans being abused, I don't think I would be made to feel welcome at a game. That won't stop me supporting from home, though. And I suppose that's kind of in the same place you are.
That's totally where I'm at, mate. Every game I watch, I always want them to win. And that's even way like Celtic players and whatever, it doesn't bother me at all. It's just I want to see them winning, but I want to see them have an identity and change and go for something. But when you look at team players, Hungary, perfect example, the group of death, and they almost qualified. That's them. They're going home with 1 point, proud. We're going home with 1 point, with raging that we never went and attacked Czech Republic.
Do you know what's excellent? That's a brilliant point, and you mentioned it earlier. See, when you listen, I say listen, right? Everything I do is inaudible. So I listened to that. I listened to Das Reboot, and see, when you listen to that, that was an FA who spoke with all the clubs and all the coaches and agreed on what the curriculum was. Now in Scotland, you have Rangers, Celtic, and 10 teams that want to take a point at Ibrox. If you watch Dutch football, so if you watch maybe Hamilton v Ross County, there's no real Scottish identity between the national side, what Rangers and Celtic are doing, and what Hamilton and Ross County are trying to do. Maybe I'm being unfair in Hamilton and Ross County when John Hughes came in, because they probably did play football at that point. But if you go watch Vitesse Arnhem versus Ado Den Haag, you could put them in different colour tops and put them anywhere in the world, and I'd probably be able to identify it as Dutch football. I'd probably be able to say that's Dutch football. I could watch Italian football and see the Italian national side and go, that's Italian football. I understand that. You could put different Scottish teams in front of me that aren't Rangers, Celtic and Scotland, and I wouldn't know who's doing what and what the idea. I think the SFA with the JD performance schools have created something ingenious, but if Rangers and Celtic can't get those boys into their first team, Nathan Patterson and Billy Gilmour will be the last 2 we see out the school, because what the Brian McLaughlin, Andy Gold and all that do at the JD performance school to improve those players is phenomenal. It's the best thing the SFA have ever come up with, but it's still not got a pathway into playing football unless you're a Billy Gilmour. He was a standout. Nathan Patterson's always going to make it because of just how good he is. But it's 2 of a pool of so many that have already went through it. And I think they're trying, but there's no buy-in from clubs because everyone is out for themselves. There's no money in Scottish football. It's so restricted. Like, even I'm now seeing Canada, the USA, bringing through young players who are moving to Europe. Reyna's son playing at Dortmund. There's another boy that's just went from New York Red Bulls to RB Leipzig. Callum Clark, I think his name is. I can't remember his name, but and a young American boy. You've got Davies who went to Bayern from Toronto. It's like, my God, how are they getting this sorted and we still can't? And it's because there's no buy-in from anyone. Everyone's out to fend for themselves because there's no money. It's just about surviving. I think Hamilton are probably the only one that really tried to break the mold a lot. But look where they are now.
John, just on the whole why a lot of Rangers fans don't watch Scotland, and a lot of it isn't just because, you know, Scotland haven't qualified for anything, they don't like the manager. There's a perception that the SFA is pro-Celtic, that the Scotland squad is pro-Celtic. Obviously, for the years that we were down the leagues, I don't think there was many Rangers players who would get into that Scotland team anyway. Maybe Lee Wallace, I don't know. There was obviously the point where I think we were in the Championship in Gordon Strachan. I think, I could be wrong, please tell me if I'm wrong, said that he wouldn't look at anybody from the Championship, but then he picked a Hibs player from the Championship and still left out Rangers players. So do you think that's paranoia, or do you think that there was or is some kind of pro-Celtic within the Scotland setup?
It's paranoia. It's all paranoia, but it's backed up by you being able to point to those types of evidence. It's me being, this is anecdotal, right? But this is like my cousin from America, girl Katie, loves soccer, came over and was like, I need to go to a game. The game that was on that week when she was up visiting was Scotland, Netherlands at Pittodrie. So I was like, right, I'll get you a ticket and I'll take you, because I knew Ryan Jack was in the squad. I was like, I'm kind of interested to see what happens. And I was there in that first half. And see, to explain to an American why people were booing, and when I say people, I was at the game. It was about 10 to 15 people when he was taking a throw in right in front of him. But if you hear booing, you hear booing. That's it. You only need to hear 10 or 15 to go, that's booing. So to explain that is baffling. That you can't explain that to an American why this is happening. So if you're a Rangers fan that thinks that an SFA is pro-Celtic and kicking your club when they're down, and you finally get a player called up and he's getting booed, doesn't matter how many section of fans it is, whether it's bitter Aberdeen fans on a Wednesday night, all you hear is booing. That is the point. Whether it stops in the second half is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. It's happened. You shouldn't be booing somebody in a Scotland shirt the same way you shouldn't boo one of your own players at any point, whether it's international or otherwise. If you're going to watch Scotland, and it's the same with the little clip about, they looked like maybe 10, 15 boys as well singing, if you hate Rangers, clap your hands. It's the same thing. See if there's one of them, it's enough to piss people off, because at some point, I call it the wee guy energy. It's always young wee guys. It's wee guy energy. At one point, you're going to come across the wrong group of Rangers fans that are in supporting Scotland. And you're going to realise that every poll that's been done for the last 15 years shows that Rangers are the biggest backing club of the Scottish national side. Most Tartan Army members, most attending of games, most attending of buying the season ticket packages. It's always Rangers that come out on top, around 25 to 30% are supporting it. So it's this myth that Rangers are the biggest supporting club of Scotland, in Scotland, on all of these polls for the last decade, has been Glasgow Rangers. So these wee guys are going to find the wrong people at some point and realise that it's not all Rangers fans that have patched it. You're mainly surrounded by them. And what they're probably doing is just ignoring you to enjoy their own time.
No, right. Well, look, I'll ask you the exact same question, Graham. With what I've said, the evidence I've put to John, what John said, do you think there is or was? And I've seen a comment, by the way, that said, paranoia, is he talking about me? Peaceful warrior, I'm always talking about you, right? Always. And by the way, if there is anybody watching who thinks he's talking shite, no, he's right, I agree with him, DM me on Twitter and we'll get you on. I'd love to get other people's opinions. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. I'm not putting my opinion across because my opinion's always wrong, so I don't have an opinion. But Graham, on that, a lot of Rangers fans, I say a lot, like John says, it's what you see on social media. It could be one person, it could be 100 people, it could be 100 million, right? Is there, and we'll keep the Tartan Army out of it because I want to come to the Tartan Army. Did you feel that there was a kind of a Celtic bias within the SFA, or a kind of keep Rangers down at any costs?
I prefer it going that way. I think it's, if you were going to say anything, it's more anti-Rangers rather than pro-Celtic, if you know what I mean. But as John says, it's wee boys, and if it annoys you, just try your best to just ignore it. But it does become hard when you start piling up the evidence, and there's going through some of it, there's like 10 to 15 things that have happened, and it does become hard to. But I just try my best to ignore it. But it becomes harder when you see negative tactics, and that gets me down, and then I start to react to that, rather than if we're doing well, I'd be able to ignore it, no problem. So that's my kind of.
John, Tartan Army. I really need to go and get the puppy, so I'm going to ask you this question. I'm still going to be listening, but I'm going to have to go and get the puppy. Andy, you're in the comments, mate, and I appreciate that you've got your points, but it always seems to be negative. Do you know what, Andy? If you've got Twitter, if you've got a computer that supports StreamYard, get yourself on the pod. We'd love to chat to you. John, the Tartan Army, is it anti-Rangers?
Mate, any one group of people is just awful to try and get a voice out of. And if you have...
Teddy come?
He's muted you, John.
It's that. There we go.
That's it.
When you've got a group like the Tartan Army, mate, they're made up of so many different factions of different clubs. It's one generic term that doesn't really mean anything. I'm not in the Tartan Army, but I would be part of a Tartan Army, in air quotes, that would go to Scotland games. So this idea that we're all meant to agree on one thing is just ludicrous. And yeah, I think on part there's voices within the Scotland fan base that's fucking nonsense, and that's par for the course of being a football fan. So some of the a load of it's frustrating. Like a load of it's frustrating. We've said booing Ryan Jack, booing Barisic, so it is painful, and that's the problem with having like a fan group. I mean, I see stuff that Union Bears posting that does my nut in, that it doesn't gel with me, and I see the same with the Tartan Army. But I don't know the solution to that problem. That's a whole different kettle of fish that we could talk for hours on.
We could. But look, we're going to kind of end the kind of Scotland chat. I don't want to keep this that negative because I do want to come on to Glenn Kamara and talk about his performances at the Euros and stuff like that. Final question, and I'll put this to both of you, Graham. I'll start with you. How do you think the relationship between the Rangers fans, I get the fright of my life here, between the Rangers fans who are disillusioned with Scotland, how does that get repaired? That's what I'm trying to ask.
It'll be prepared when, obviously, hopefully they see more Rangers players and more like that in the squad. But see if we just come out and say, look, we're going to start a revamp. Young players are going to coach better, blah, blah, blah. We'll see it benefits. Germany done it in 2000 and then they won the World Cup in 2016. It takes time and you need to be patient. As long as it was the same with us. See, under Gerrard, they lasted 3 years. That wouldn't happen under a lot in the past. But you see the progress and you see the how we were playing in Europe. You see them building it, so you give them a chance. If Scotland come out and say we're going to do this, a lot of fans will get behind it, especially me, because I want to just see a style, identity, trying to better ourselves. And I think that's where we're letting ourselves down. That's why a lot of people are they're not interested as such. I
know, because the thing is, and I think what a lot of people forget, I need to keep muting Graham because his feedback's ridiculous. A lot of people forget, John, is that before all this, pre-2012, I think Rangers fans probably made up most of, if not all, not all, but most of the Scotland support. I think there was a large section of Rangers fans in the Tartan Army. Graham's mentioned that we get more players in the team. Is that the only way you can see a lot of Rangers supporters coming back to Scotland?
No, we don't need to see if the football's good. Hampden will be 50,000 deep anyway. We'll get to major tournaments. We never had every Rangers fan. There was still Rangers fans that didn't
of course not.
It was good. I think what happened was there was a good set of managers, a good bit of football building up to 2012. Walter Smith, Alex McLeish took over for Bertie Votes, and there was a mix. There was a whole host of Rangers players: McGregor, Hutton, Davy Weir, Barry Ferguson, Kenny Miller. They were all there. So you did have that, and that Graham's right. That's the only way we'll fix this is see when Rangers players are involved more in the squad. That's the only way it will change. But I see one of the points that the last thing I will say on this is these polls are taken every 2 years on the Scotland National Side Supporters Club. Rangers are the biggest supporter of Scotland. You don't need to believe that. It's just fact. These polls are available. Rangers are the biggest fan base that supports Scotland. That doesn't mean all Rangers fans support Scotland. They don't
no, of course not. Of course not.
They just are the biggest contributor towards going to Scotland games as Rangers fans. As it stands, I don't have any reason behind that. I just think it's sad. That's all. Like when I see Ali McCoy still waxing lyrical about his Scotland time at Euro 96, like there didn't feel like there was that massive divide. So obviously, the last thing I would say is the SFA, similar to Tartan Army, are a complex, massive organisation. If you want to talk about the heads of the SFA, voting on Rangers status, then yes, I'll join in and fucking abuse them as much as anyone else. But I do my coaching path with the SFA. That is in a host of employees who do their job tremendously. If you want to talk about the SFA and the standard of refereeing, that's a very different discussion I'm going to have. The SFA are a complex organisation, so to say like one organisation is against one set of people is so difficult because they do so many different things. But if we want to talk about refereeing and the CEOs of it, then by all means I'll chime in.
Well, we're already 40 minutes in, and I just want to apologise to everybody watching that I've been a bit off it. And if Scott Kennedy was on, he would have told me that I'm asking crap questions. My missus left just before the podcast started. I've got my 6-year-old daughter and a puppy, and try to host a podcast is rather difficult. Peaceful Warrior, absolutely spot on. What about a Jer winning the world's strongest man? Big Tom Stoltman. Am I pronouncing that right, Graham? Fantastic to see. Fantastic to see.
I was buzzing for him when I seen it. I watched them on the two Stoltman brothers were on the James English podcast, and I watched in the story's brilliant, and then you can see how hard he's worked for over the last 5, even further years. So I was delighted, and the video when you see him, when he knows he's won it, it's brilliant. I loved seeing it.
It's not just great, John, from a Rangers point of view. Him being a big Rangers fan. It's also Scottish. It's a Scot that's now the world's strongest man.
I mean, that's us. We run this. We run this country. We run this globe now. We are officially the strongest people in the world until they do it next year, and hopefully they hold on to it once again. But it's just amazing. This is what I keep saying. It's what I said about last time. We'll say is about this idea, the Dash reboot idea. We need to shift this small country mentality. See if you actually bring it back to Rangers and what Gerard's done with us in Europe. We're no longer a team that's just happy to get to a European group stage now. Mm-hmm. I think most Rangers fans, because of what Gerard's done, are confident that we're a big enough side to go to the Champions League group stages. And I honestly think we're at a point where I would be like, we could probably get out of it. Just the way his style, and it's shifting that mentality. I go to European night. I go to European nights and watch us in Europe thinking we're going to beat this team. We're going to give Bayer Leverkusen a game. We're going to knock out Braga. We're going to get a result against Benfica and Porto. It's mental, and that's just a shift of one man's focus on what he can do with a group of players. So yeah, as a nation, we need to shift that mentality as well because it's brutal.
No, it's a great point because I'm guilty myself. I'll watch a European game and I'll be thinking to myself, nah. But before it, no, we're not going to win the night. I don't see it. I don't see it. But then I say that in every Old Firm game. I'm the most pessimistic man in the world. But can I just say that we have had comment of the night. Big Andy, sorry, but Mark Henry will always be the world's strongest man. That is comment of the night, isn't it? RFC 55, Big Tom 55, Peaceful Warrior, the Blue Hulk, love it. Wally must be on comments tonight because he never hides his love for Rangers. It says Rangers Rabble, but it wasn't me, so it must be Big Wally. And CGM, he's only 27, didn't know that, so he can dominate strongman for the next 5 years. Let's hope he does. Let's come to, I don't even know what that means, simple kind of man. I don't really know if I should put that on screen, but anyway, let's move to Glenn Kamara, Graham. First of all, what did you make of Glenn's performances in the Euros?
You're going to hate me here, but due to work, I've never seen any Finland games.
John, what did you make of Glenn's performances during the Euros?
So the Denmark game was a hard one because everything that went on. The game broke up, but the Russia first half, he was the only player in that team that knew how to move the ball forward. The only player in that team that knew how to get the ball to Timo Pukki, and for the life of me, can't remember the leg striker's name. In the last game, that was his best game. I think that was his best 90 minutes. I was really, really impressed with him for large spells against Belgium. Actually, a lot of the stuff he'd done without the ball was getting praised for. He was always in the right position. For the most part, kept De Bruyne and Tielemans quiet when they were in there, and Witsel as well. But a couple of times he got the ball going forward. He showed exactly what we've seen him do time and time again from Rangers. And it is that he's fearless. Like, he's came through Arsenal's academy. The boy's played at Rangers for 2 years now. He's an absolute baller, and he will, whether it's this year or next year, he belongs at a massive league and a massive club within that league. And if I was like, I would not be shy of saying he belongs back at Arsenal because people always dismiss the Scottish league. I watched Granit Xhaka enough to know that Glenn Kamara is a better footballer than Granit Xhaka, 100%. And I would be looking for big money from him. I don't think he's particularly stood out that he's raised the valuation. I just think he's probably raised his profile enough that we will have clubs sniffing around now because he can do both sides of the game. And I don't know if that was part to his spell at Dundee, but he can definitely do both sides of the games. He can dig in and put in a defensive display, although that's not his prime role at Rangers because his role is to get the ball going forward because we have possession. But he's definitely learned that dogged that he could go to a good Premier League side and dig in when he has to as well. But he is... We've been really, really blessed to have him, man. He's been absolutely tremendous. I've loved watching him. He's totally transformed. I remember a couple of games when he first joined. I was like what do we get somebody for Dundee for? And
He worries me a wee bit. Do you know what, John? It used to worry me slightly that he looked that calm and composed. That it felt as if sometimes when he went to pass the ball, he forgot to put any power in it, and it left us exposed a couple of times. But then I realised, because I was told by somebody who actually knows about football, that he's expecting the players to be able to anticipate where he's going to put the ball. He's that far ahead.
I think he's amazing. I think that's exactly what it is, and I think Gerrard knew the minute he got him, he had to have Ryan Jack, he had to get Steve Davis, and he had to get people around him that were going to be on his wavelength. He had to have Barisic on his side or Tavernier on his side, depending on where he was. The guy's amazing. See that Rolls Royce of a player, that is the perfect description of Glenn Kamara. Everything he does is so tidy. If you were like to point to a time in the early 2000s and said what youth teams he came through, you'd be like Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, 100%. Mm-hmm. Technique's beautiful, football's tidy, just a really, really nice player.
The most gifted player in our squad, Graham, and of course, if that is the case, maybe Joe Aribo, Hadji, maybe you could maybe say, but we need to get him a new contract and we need to get it pronto.
I hope so, mate. I think what a lot of us went missing this year is, tactically, I think he's come on so much better as well. Because that's how Barisic could be able to go up that left side with Kent, because he drops back in. I first kind of started noticing that because I watched Frankie de Jong at Ajax, and he kind of dropped in for the centre of the park into left back, and Kamara does that quite a bit as well. He's always back and covering, and he gets about the park constantly. So I really hope they do sign him, but unfortunately, I think he's the one that will be sold this summer.
Well, there's a few people in the comments, John, saying that, look, as fantastic a player as he is, that he's the one that we should look to cash in on. I don't know. I'm stuck in this mindset. I'm old school. I just want to keep our best players and I want to go for a run in the Champions League. But that's not how football, that's not how life works. There's been talk, obviously, Morelos, we've discussed that a wee bit, Barisic, Kamara. Is that probably the better option for Rangers to maybe look to try and cash in on him? But like you say, it's not as if he completely raised his valuation at the Euros. But I don't think all that was his fault. He was playing in a decent but not great Finnish team.
Yeah, they're just very defensive. They're very solid. They were just like Iceland. You would hope that he stood out in the same way. But it depends. It depends what the value is. I don't think we're going to get massive amounts. It's going to be a record sale when we sell Glenn Kamara if we do it this summer. But I don't think it's going to be as big as some people think, just because of the contract situation. But it just depends if we can get a cheaper replacement in who's just as good. I know we talked about St Johnson player, and we talked about Lewis Ferguson, and we've talked about Billy Gilmour maybe coming in. As long as we can replace him with somebody who also can develop in our team and go forward, I don't think he's the most important player on our team. I think Ryan Kent's the one player I would not want to sell at any cost this season. He needs to stay on. So I think Kamara probably can be sold on, but I wouldn't be in a rush to unless the money's absolutely right.
Do you think there is a pressure then, Graham, for us to sell players this year? I mean, I know we're going over old ground here, and for the last kind of 10 minutes, I want to kind of touch on another kind of thing. So I want to touch on BBC Radio Scotland and how maybe that might relationship might change next season, seeing as we are now champions. But what was my question? I've totally forgot.
It was about Kamara.
Kamara, yeah.
I think we need to sell just because Ross Wilson spoke about it. So that is going to happen. Ideally, like yourself, I would love them all to stay, get in the Champions League, have a good Champions League, win the league next year, and then grow as a thing. But unfortunately, that's not the way it works. And eventually, we do need to start actually breaking even and stuff like that as well as a club to move forward. So I think it's just inevitable that one of them will have to go.
I know I really do have to apologise to everybody watching. I have not been on tonight. Puppy Daughter podcast. It's been an absolute nightmare. John, it was something I did want to touch on ever so slightly because it's something that bugs me. My old job, I used to be a bus driver. The only way I could listen to football while I was working was on the radio. Rangers get very, very little out of Sportsound. But it actually got to the point where I was listening, and if they said something negative about Rangers that they were quite right to say at the time because that thing was negative or whatever, it annoyed me. Very rarely you heard positive things. Did you see that relationship with Radio Scotland and Rangers changing at any point?
No, keep them where they are. I think this is the one thing I will agree on. I don't think that was paranoia. I think that was they were baiting in a way that they knew their viewership. I think I've said this before when we talked about the mainstream media. Was the Old Firm Facts Twitter page was talking about how that you were kind of pressured within your job, or you were told within your job if you mentioned one of the Old Firm in a negative light, you got more interest and more clicks on your site than anything else. So that was a deliberate thing. They realised where Rangers were. They realised to make more clicks and more engagement was to wind up Rangers fans. To be honest, the same way they've wound up Celtic fans this year with loads of their content, because they know it's who they should kick when they're down. They'll never go for the champions. They'll always go for the Old Firm side that aren't performing, because they'll get the irate fans on. So no, seeing we're fans, keep them out. Don't repair the relationship. We've got fan media for that now. They're done. They're done. Don't go anywhere near them. Leave them to have any negative press, because it just looks embarrassing. See, when you go to Sportsound and watching a Sunday night and Rangers comments for the game by Steven Gerrard is in print and somebody has to read it out because he's no willing to talk to you, it's just embarrassing that it had to come to this. So no, don't let them back in. We're now the champions. They can go bait Celtic fans for the next hopefully 4, 5, 6, 7 years whilst we win title after title. They can go bait them.
The only thing I would say against that is, and I'm not really talking about Sportsound, because even if they were in Ibrox, Sportsound's horrendous anyway. You've got Stephen Thompson sitting there, and you can tell when he's talking there's a mirror, so he can just stare at himself. But I'm talking more about Sportsound, Graham, in particular, because, like I say, my job was a bus driver. The only way, because you can't use up all your mobile data watching, and you can't watch stuff when you're driving anyway. I never done that. So the only option I had to listen to Rangers games was on the radio. And when it was Sportsound, when they done their boycott, and this is something I really wanted, because a lot of people think Rangers banned the BBC from Ibrox. That was never the case. They banned Chris McLaughlin for stuff that Chris McLaughlin was putting in papers. That is, I think, something that gets taken out of context. Rangers did not ban the BBC. But that's the only way for some people to listen to Rangers and hear about Rangers and hear Gerrard talk.
I totally agree, mate. When I work quite a lot of Sundays, I'm travelling, and I used to listen to, like, especially Old Firms, because they were always Sundays. But I always listened to it as well, and that was the only way I could do it as well. But it's older generations that maybe don't have like Sky or that, and that's what their way to listen to Rangers games. It's them I feel sorry for, but at the same time I also agree that there's no way back for them. I don't think, to be honest. It's just with fan media and that as well, it's just taking over. So I wouldn't really bother about them, to be honest.
I know, listen, I totally get that, John, and 99% of the time fan media conquers all. But for people who maybe aren't tech savvy, who have never watched a podcast or don't have Twitter or Facebook, old school people that don't read a paper. I mean, how many people now read a paper? You know what I mean? Their only access to listening to football, hearing about football, a lot of the time was, like you say, Sportsound at night or the radio while the games are on. So they people are obviously going to be left out if there's no relationship between BBC Sportsound and Rangers.
I guess, but like I always feel there is the coverage on. I know it's just as bad. I know Clyde's scoreboard is awful, but there is places to get it. But hopefully at some point that these people can just be turned on to how easy it is to go on your phone and listen to these things, or get your TV to go to a website. These things are available. I mean, I'm maybe talking for a position of just having this technology lying around, but like my grandma could work a mobile and get a podcast turned on. By the time that was happening, I'm pretty sure if she could do it, anyone could do it, kind of thing. But yeah, I get it. But no, they made that rod for their own back, because just listening to it and getting angry. That's why I don't listen to him. Mainstream radio stations, because I would just get angry one way or the other. So no.
I know, and I don't even listen to Clyde. I'm not going to lie to you. The only time I listened to Clyde was obviously this season. That's because of everything that was going on. But listen, I think that'll do us, gents. That's 55 minutes. So I think we might end it there for a change. Listen, nobody wanted to come on the podcast, which I thought, I mean, come on. I might do it next week, but I'm on holiday for 2 weeks, and I don't know if Volume Urban's got the temperament to deal with having to use Twitter and YouTube and StreamYard at the same time. But anyway, listen, thanks everybody for watching. Graham, mate, it's good to see you again, and I hope you're back on soon.
It's good to be back, mate. I'll try and get a mic next time for us. sound
I know.
problems don't help.
That feedback was absolutely disgraceful, mate. So that's like it's a verbal warning. That's what I'm going to do.
No worries, mate.
John, mate, it's always good to have you on.
Thanks very much. Sorry, my sound was so perfect that people could actually hear me talking to Scotland.
CGM, I don't do Twitter. Well, you're going to have to do Twitter because we're going to have to get you on at some point. Because you're one of the main contributors. RFC 55 as well. You better get yourself on as well, and hopefully next week the content will be better because it'll probably be William Urban that's hosting, and he knows what he's talking about. Like RFC 55 says, Bears Corner or the Battle People podcast is on at 8, so get yourself over and check that out. So listen, thanks everybody for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, blah blah blah, do all that sort of stuff. And you won't see me next week, but you will see somebody else. So until then, keep safe, and we'll speak to you soon.